Zara, welcome to Naked Beauty. I'm so excited to have you on.
I've been waiting my whole life for this, truly.
Well, I feel like you are such an amazing career woman, like a woman in business, because you've had this incredible career story where you started at the White House, then you went to Vogue.
I went to Silicon Valley. I was in Uber.
Okay, you were at Uber.
Yeah.
Then you went to Vogue. Then you went to the Wing,
Yeah.
which doesn't even exist anymore.
Right.
When we met, you were at the Wing.
Yes.
And now you're just like running your own business, doing your own thing as a boss, but you've always just been like very cool and also outspoken about how to navigate your career. And then you're just like a beauty girl as well, always giving us a look, always giving us a hair, an eye, like a moment.
It all sort of just happened with the beauty part. And it became one of those things that actually made it a lot easier for me to engage in because I realized that it still could be fun.
Yes.
Like I still had my point of view about politics or policy or like sort of just the world in general. And that I always sort of led with how I felt about the world before I sort of reminded folks that it's also very okay to care about beauty.
Yes.
And it really happened in a way that felt super organic and unforced.
I love that.
And I've always sort of tried to like engage in it in a way that always preserves like it being fun. Like I don't sort of like do SpawnCon or a bunch of sort of like things that like I don't like endorse products that I don't use. If people DM me and ask me specific questions, I'm always sort of like excited and happy to answer. But then I also get to like disengage from it when I want to.
Yes.
Which is really nice.
Yes.
But I have so much respect for people who do it full time because my gosh,
I know.
like it is a lot of work.
It is a lot of work.
Yeah.
It is a lot of work. Now, speaking of work, one of the things that you brought up when we were on a panel together, literally so long ago, that was
Oh my
pre-pandemic, but you
BC, before COVID.
Before COVID, exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. You talked about salary transparency in a really interesting way, where you were saying that women of color should actually ask their white counterparts how much money they're making. Is that something you've done before?
Yes.
Okay.
And I also want to say that like I have an update to that ethos, which is that like women of color actually shouldn't really have to take on the labor of asking our white counterparts to share their salaries. I think that white people are and also non-Black people specifically, because there obviously is a significant pay gap between Black women and other minority groups, and specifically with Asian Americans in certain industries, we also have, we make more money.
Right.
And
Tech being one of them.
Tech, medicine, and so I've sort of readjusted my perspective. And a lot of this is sort of informed by the work of a lot of Black women in this space who have sort of been like, that's not the labor of us to do it. It's actually on you and your white counterparts to, or peers in whatever job you might have, to create an environment in which it's normalized. It shouldn't be uncomfortable, especially as women. We have to very much take care of each other. And I think that there is this expectation that, it has to be this sort of like difficult or sort of thorny conversation. And I think that we really have to reconfigure the way that we're thinking about it. But that starts with, I think, asking folks, leading with white people, to start actively sharing how much money they made in a position, if they held it previously, or if they're in the same sort of pay band as somebody that's been hired, just to be like, hey, this is how much I made, just so you know. This is how much my bonus was, or this is how often I get a raise. And I think that I think that it's sort of like, it became less of me sort of like demanding everybody tell me, and more so like me actually being able to, think about it in a different way, which I think is important.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's very interesting. And I want to get into your experience working at Vogue. That is a place that I interned as well, and also notoriously doesn't pay well. So people with a certain amount of privilege are able to work there.
Yeah.
But before we get into that, you started your career at the White House.
Yeah.
Working on Barack Obama's campaign.
Yeah.
First the re-election campaign.
Yes.
And then
I started on the campaign side first, and then I went to the White House.
So what was that like?
Wild. It's so wild to think about that it's been a decade now. I mean, I can't even believe it. And that was the re-elect too. So I think a lot of the times, like, people really are shocked to hear that I was an incredibly misguided, totally undedicated, just deeply unserious person before.
Really?
Yeah. Like,
where did you grow up?
I grew up in South Florida. So
Okay.
I grew up in St. Lucie County,
Okay.
which in politics is sort of referred to, in politics is referred to as, as part of the I-4 corridor, which is part of a collection of counties that are purple, decide sort of the way that Florida swings in presidential elections. But, it's sort of the beginning of the South.
Okay.
We really call it like sort of like South Georgia, like at that point. I grew up in a city that is very diverse, a collection of a lot of white folks, lower income white folks, but also snowbirds. And then I also, of course, growing up in Florida, there's a lot of Hispanic and Latino communities, Haitian communities, and Black folks as well, of course. My high school actually is famously the last place that Zora Neale Hurston taught.
Oh, wow.
And so she was a huge part of my curriculum growing up, and the days she spent the final years of her life were the house right across the street from my high school. And so, high school, I was in an accelerated program. I was in an international baccalaureate. I was a bright kid. I was smart, but I only really wanted to learn what I wanted to learn. And so in retrospect, I definitely had undiagnosed ADD. Like it was just like, my mom was always kind of always on the edge of her seat. Like, what is going to happen to her? I think she still always feels a little bit like that, as I think most moms, many times do.
And where's your mom from?
My mom, both of my parents are from Bangladesh.
Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
And have you spent time in Bangladesh?
Oh, yeah, so much time.
Okay.
Yeah, so much time. I really am so lucky that my family, my parents made a concerted effort to make sure that we were going there every summer to spend time with our grandparents and my cousins and my uncles and aunts. And it was my first language. My mom really believed if we learned Bengali that we would, of course, learn English at school, and we knew to speak English at school. We only spoke Bengali in the home.
Love that.
And it was a very sort of course, in retrospect, I now am so deeply appreciative, but of course, it's not novel or new to sort of hear the story that it was not as fun growing up, especially when you're sort of living in a place where white adjacency is key to how you move through the world and survive and see yourself. I also grew up in my elementary school years going to an evangelical Christian school. And so
and you are
Muslim.
Muslim. Okay.
Yeah. So you can imagine. Yeah.
Did you feel like you struggled with feeling beautiful or your beauty identity growing up?
Oh my gosh, so much so. And now it's sort of like I've actually been thinking a lot about this lately, especially because I was watching this TikTok. I'm sure you know that I love TikTok.
Yes. Don't we all?
I'm obsessed. I feel like I've learned so much. Truly, Gen Z has taught me so much, and I'm so grateful for sort of like the tools that have allowed them to sort of share their progressive and just deeply insightful perspectives on everything.
I say literally once a week that I wish I was Gen Z. I feel like they are so much more progressive than we were growing up.
I know.
And I look at even the pop stars they have versus the pop stars we grew up with, and the level of like discourse and dialogue. They're just on a totally different level.
Okay, I will say though, I do think we had better music and artists. You can't lie about that.
Sure, we had great music and artists, but just even in terms of like who we thought was beautiful, like having Christina Aguilera, Britney Spears, versus like they have, you know,
just so much more.
So much more.
Totally, I absolutely agree. But I was watching a TikTok, and this young woman. I mean, gosh, she must be like 20, maybe. Actually, now that I think about it, she's probably like 18. Was talking about sort of like this idea of how a lot of many South Asian women particularly talk about their glow up, right? Like, and they'll post like a photo of themselves from when they were young and they had like a lot of body hair, or their hair was unkempt, or their eyebrows were sort of undone. Their eyebrows were threaded. And then they'll post like a really beautiful photo of them now. And sort of the idea that like, I certainly wish that I had extended myself more grace, young me. And that I, for years, would look at photos of myself from when I was a kid and be like, oh gosh, I was so like uncute. I was so ugly, or I was so like, oh God, like, so like the shame and embarrassment that you're sort of like trained to like feel. And now I look at them in a totally different way. Like I was very cute. I was very outspoken. I was like, sort of like, I didn't feel unconfident until I got older. And, when you get to an age, 14, 15, 16, when you start to sort of think about, your other girls or boys or whatever it is that you're interested in and how they feel about you. And I think that is sort of where I am in my journey of sort of decolonizing my brain and like how I felt about myself. But certainly at the time, I think that like when I was young, like I did feel, like I was constrained by our financial limitations, by the strictness of my mom, and by society, and but again, like not until I got older was I sort of like really focused on how other people felt about me.
Was there an instance of someone saying something to you in high school? Like, I feel like everyone has a story of some like ignorant boy that said something about your physical appearance that just sticks.
There isn't like sort of like, I generally, as a point of view, just try to forget what men say most of the time. But I definitely got like a lot of sort of comments and probably like things that now that I think about them, were probably like digs about my unibrow. And again, I come from a culture and a society where this is a sign of beauty, and I felt so much shame about it. And my mom always used to like be like, it's so beautiful. Like, and I had aunts who were just gorgeous and like, like they were the women that I looked at and I was, taught me how to put makeup on and things like that. That would be like, it's beautiful. Like, and they would show me pictures of this very famous Bollywood actress named Kajol, who has a unibrow and she's known for it. And it's also a sign of luck in Hindu culture specifically, from what I believe. And I think that I was just so, against it, that like, well, you know, I would go and I would pluck them myself. I one time took a razor to it. I know.
Wow.
I know. I got in a lot of trouble. My mom like kicked my ass. Like, she didn't kick my ass actually, but like, you know, she was like, no, do not ever do that again. And I was in so much trouble for it. But I remember that pretty specifically. I got like, it was more so sort of like when I was at private school, you know, my parents worked really hard. My parents owned a convenience store and spent all of their money sending me and my sister to private school. And it was just the thing that they believed was like, you know, the most important thing that they could do is give us the best education possible. And during that time, insecurities about sort of, you know, your finances and sort of like, that's sort of the moment that you realize that like you're different than other kids.
Right.
You know, because like you go a large part of your childhood not really thinking about where, like how much money your parents make in comparison to your friends, you know, parents. And then you go to private school and then somebody invites you over.
Right.
Right. And then you're like, oh, or like the cars that like, you know, you get picked up in because there's no bus system. Right. So it's like your parents have to pick you up every day. Or, you know, my mom was always late to pick us up. Because she was running a store. And so like sometimes she would be like, we would be the last kids there. Right. And it wasn't because she was, you know, at the time we would be so embarrassed and so like upset. And it's just like, she's doing the best she could, you know?
She was working.
Yeah. And I think that it first started sort of with like that layer for me. And my sister, I know, felt it a lot more because she was in middle school. She was my sister's 4 years older than me, and she was sort of like you know, like when you're in middle school going into high school.
Brutal.
My gosh, especially at a private school, like awful.
Yes.
Ooh. And a Christian, an evangelical Christian private school. They called us heathens one time. It was like, you know, like the memories are wild. My first sort of act of political defiance was my first day at this school. My mom actually recently told me this story, and I didn't even remember. But you know, they pledge allegiance to the flag in the morning, and then they pledge allegiance to the Christian flag, and then they pledge allegiance to the Bible.
Oh wow!
And
I didn't even know there was a Christian flag.
Oh, there very much is.
Okay.
Yes.
Learning new things every day.
Yeah, totally. And so I remember. Or I don't remember this, but my mom was saying she told me that, you know, I pledged allegiance to the American flag, and then they started pledge allegiance to the Christian flag, and I was like, oh, well, this doesn't apply to me, and I sat down.
Oh wow.
Not in sort of any like active like, well, I'm not doing, you know what I mean? I was
Yeah.
just like, this isn't relevant to me, like, you know what I mean?
Right.
And I got sent to the principal's office.
Wow.
On my first day of school.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
So that political defiance was there, and it's so interesting to think about you ending up as like your first work experience, you know, working for Obama and doing digital specifically at a time when people were figuring out how to use Instagram and Twitter to connect with young people. It must have been very exciting. Did you feel you were able to express yourself with like beauty and fashion then early in your career?
Oh my gosh, yeah. That's such an interesting question because I also think this is like sort of an untalked about thing. I keep knocking this mic, sorry. I think it's so. Background is that I was going to college at the University of South Florida. Got in by the skin of my teeth, truly. You know, my sister's like very sort of book smart. Went to Emory, got into Columbia for her master's. Like, you know what I mean? Like, sort of doing the like immigrant dream, like, you know, first child journey. And here I am at the University of South Florida in a white Pan-Hellenic sorority.
Oh,
like,
wow. I cannot imagine you in a sorority.
I can't either, but I was there. I was a Tri-Delta.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Why?
Interesting.
Why did I do that?
Interesting.
Anyway, at the time, I went to, so that was also an interesting experience because I was the only woman of color
In the whole sorority?
Not the whole sorority. I was like one of like probably like 5, honestly.
Okay.
Like out of like still just dismal.
Yeah.
But I remember thinking, like, you know, at that time you're like, you feel pride. Like you're like, oh, like I'm one of I made it. You know? Instead of like a mentality of sort of abundance or like, why aren't there more of us? I was sort of like, I made it. I was thinking about myself and like what made me exceptional and how I got in that room. When in reality, like, obviously all of the things that I should have been asking is, where the fuck are the rest of us?
Right.
And I had been sort of trained or conditioned rather to believe that I was an exception to the rule.
Yeah.
I deeply sort of, you know, I don't want to say the word regret, but it's one of those things that because obviously I'm now on the journey that I am, and I needed to experience that and know that about myself to be where I am today. But it's so funny to think about, like, when you're like, wow, like, how did now when you know me, as you know, like, you're like, how you were in a sorority, and it's like,
yeah, but I think that awareness as a person of color to get into a place, a predominantly white institution, whether that's like a company, a sorority, to look around and then also feel comfortable enough to say, why aren't there more of us?
Totally.
I think for many minorities, they're just like, okay, I made it into the room.
Totally.
And so
now you have to fight for your life. Yeah.
Yes, now I have to fight for my life. I don't also then feel empowered to raise my voice and say, why aren't there more of us? And that comes with time.
Absolutely. And so all that to say is sort of like, I then, you know, I went and interned in Bangladesh, where my family is from, for a man named Muhammad Yunus, who won the Nobel Prize for conceptualizing microfinance, which are small collateral-free loans that are primarily given to women because they're better. They're a better group to lend to because they're much more reliable. In repaying their loans, and he was coming up with a new business called social business. Anyway, all that to say that that was the moment that I sort of realized that I cared about doing something in my work. It was the aha moment where I was like, oh, I can feel excited about something that actually contributes to like society, the good of society writ large.
Yes.
And so went back to school. That fall, I got an email about interning on a campaign. I knew that Barack Obama was running for re-election. I assumed it was him. So I applied, I got interviewed, and I got hired. And between sort of like being a college senior and working on a campaign, and I was working at Nordstrom.
Okay.
Part-time, my first like retail job. I was coming to work a little bit more dressed up. You know, I was sort of like, you know, I cared about what I looked like, you know, in the workplace. And I think that on campaigns, there's this idea, and even in politics in general, that like you spend so much time working. And they do, absolutely. Like they spend so much time thinking about policy and you know, and writing and executing an agenda and legislation, et cetera, you know, all the things that politics are, that they don't, that there isn't sort of an expectation that you'll look your best.
Yes.
And that when you do, it's for a reason.
Yes.
And I really tried to like make sure I was always putting my best foot forward. Also because I know that I didn't have sort of the same luxury as white people. Politics is still, democratic politics to this, like, doesn't matter sort of like where you sit on the spectrum. I think that there's this misconception that like democratic politics is somehow much more diverse behind the scenes than it is. It's not.
Yeah.
It's a deeply white space.
Yes.
And so I didn't really have the luxury of just like showing up looking, you know,
in anything.
Right. Like,
Yeah.
and just being like, I didn't brush my teeth this morning. Oops. Like,
Right,
no.
right.
Like, I had to always be on.
Yes.
And also, like, many of the women that are my peers, you know, that are brown or black women, also are always on. They're the best dressed women in the room, you know?
Yes.
And I think that that is true of even our elected officials, if you think about it. They have to be perfect.
Yes.
And so that really also carries into behind the scenes. And so like it was from the campaign, like I would always show up to every event. I was like, the president of the United States is going to be here. Why wouldn't I be sort of like looking to the nines, you know what I mean? Or dressed to the nines.
Right.
And so I always cared as much as I could. But I think that's always just sort of carried through my career. And I realized that it actually just gave me that sense of dignity and sort of feeling in the morning that made me feel my best.
I love that.
And I tried I always tried to do that and carry that through.
What do you think about the way AOC's beauty choices are discussed?
Oh, gosh. I mean, she does such an excellent job of addressing it in a way that I think that is exactly why she is who she is. And thank God we have young, progressive women more and more. You know, since she's been elected, it's been sort of like incredible to see the impact or just sort of like the carrying on of sort of what it looks like to elect young, progressive women into office who don't take shit. You know what I mean? Like, like her sort of like the fierce urgency of the rights, like, interest in whatever it is that she's doing, and being able to sort of address the things that she does, particularly that they like did or does that they think are frivolous. Bartending, getting dressed up, doing a shoot for a magazine where she's very clearly lent clothes that are not hers.
Right.
That somehow it becomes like the dog whistles are sort of no longer dog whistles. They're just saying how they feel.
Outright attacks.
Totally.
Yes.
If Trump did one thing, it was made people say what they feel outright more so than hiding behind what it is that they're not scared to say.
I mean,
and I think that like I'm sort of more fearful of people pretending that they're saying one thing when they're saying another.
Sure. I prefer outward
totally.
racism.
100%.
So you know
show me who
stand.
you are so I know where to move to navigate around you.
Yes.
Or how to see you.
Yes.
And so, yeah, I mean, I'm so grateful for her and you know, what she's done to make it so that she can show up as her full self at work. And I think that should be true for every woman.
Yeah.
Obviously, she's a much more public figure than most.
Yes.
But, you know, she certainly calls out all the right things that, you know, it's like, let's not get into this. If we go tit for tat on what you're spending and what I'm spending.
Right.
Like.
You're going to be embarrassed.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
Talk to me about your approach to beauty today. You've got this gorgeous glitter eye moment happening that I love. And now you have the luxury of working for yourself.
Yeah.
You pick your own clients.
Yeah.
But you still have to, you know, command respect and attention.
Yeah.
How do you navigate your beauty choices now?
Oh my gosh. The pandemic certainly, I think, had a really significant impact on the way that not only I like think about beauty, which is just one way people perceive me, but the way people perceive me in general. I spent a solid portion of my career, the majority of my career, really thinking about letting my career define me. And I think that I had a sort of moment after, you know, when the pandemic begun, where I was like, all right, no office, no work that is sort of, you know, I was no longer sort of working in-house anywhere. I'm on my own. Society was certainly going through a reckoning on ethics, morals, race, all of the above, immigration. And I think that I had a moment where I was like, who am I? You know?
Talk to me a little bit more about what you just said about
yeah,
defining yourself by your career.
Yeah,
Because I think a lot of people inadvertently define themselves by their career
yeah,
and they don't realize it. How did you
Totally.
realize that that's where your sense of self-worth was coming from?
I think my politics changed. I think the way that I saw the world changed. I think that the things that I was telling people they should believe, the things that I was like as a communications person really going out and like going to bat for, I had a moment of inflection where I was like, is this totally aligned with what I believe and who I am? And I think that like a lot of people are really scared to have an honest, particularly when it comes to politics, like a really honest conversation about opinions changing. And I just have realized in the last 2 years, I'm far more progressive than I ever let myself be.
Interesting. And especially working at places like Vogue, I would
Yeah.
imagine that it was hard to be
Totally.
very progressive.
Totally. But I felt more progressive in that place than I did in politics, though. So I felt like in the sense that like because it was separated from politics, because I was one of the only people working there that had this experience. People looked to me to be sort of a political
Yes.
light or
Yes.
guiding sort of guide, and I, not until the pandemic happened and we watched incredible movements happen and incredible conversations about what we should be demanding of our elected officials and the country that we live in and who we are morally, did I realize that there was a break between the way that I thought people show up in the world and how politics serves them. And that there were still people that, Black people specifically, that have been and were in 2020 and continue to this day, are talking about progressive politics and sort of radical, ideals that are only need to be accomplished outside of political systems. It wasn't until then that I appreciated the limits of my job, and I think that I had a moment where I was like, okay, actually, I realized that like carrying other people's water has actually never served me totally well. And I think that happened at Vogue. I think it happened at the Wing. I think it happened, in many of the jobs that I've had, where I realized like, okay, I went in with this mentality that I can like, you go in and you leave something better than you found it. You do the best you can to push people to a place where they're seeing different perspectives and you're commanding respect and you're, telling them the right thing to do. And the reality is that has a limit. And as do corporations and capitalism and all the sort of things that are involved with having a job, that I realized that like those things were not giving me back the same sort of compassion and benefit of the doubt and service that I was putting into it. And I think that that is a really hard realization to have. And so in these last 2 years, like I had so much fun, like working on things that I thought, were certainly different than work that I've done before, but allowed me to try doing things and either say I enjoyed that or I didn't enjoy that. I liked that, and actually like letting myself have that conversation about what parts of my work I enjoy, because I get to work for myself and figure that out. And so yeah, it's definitely still something that I'm sort of reckoning with, the way that I move through the world, and I would hate to sort of like tell anybody that it's like, yeah, like I have this amazing career. I will, if I want to fall back on sort of my resume, I always will have that. And I'm so grateful for all the people that, and all the work that I did. And I worked certainly really hard, and I deserve all the things that I have. But I'm having an honest conversation with myself about how I want to move forward. I'm 31 years old. You know what I mean?
Yes.
So.
And 31 is still so young.
Right.
So I'm excited to see, all that you've accomplished in the years ahead. Being someone that is mindful of just politics, that has a progressive way of looking at the world, do you sometimes find it difficult to be a beauty consumer? And I ask this because the beauty industry is just that. It's an industry with, the bottom line is ultimately what these companies care about. How do you think about supporting certain beauty brands, your relationship with purchasing things? Is that something that you interrogate a lot?
Yes and no. I think that because I now have sort of like curated trusting voices so much and looking to voices and faces that I trust their ethics and their perspectives on guiding me to the right products, that I've been able to like create a foundation that allows me to sort of pick beauty products based on that.
That makes sense.
So for example, like many of the sort of like recommendations that I get come from very specific people. Other Black women in the beauty space who are building businesses that actually contribute to, the bottom line of building out, financial equity and wealth for communities of color.
Yes.
I have to say that I think about that more than I think about sort of sustainability, and I absolutely believe that sustainability and the environment are fundamentally important, and I think that that there's certainly an undeniable racial layer that comes to the way that global warming impacts communities of color, of course. But for me, I think, and many folks of color, like I'm really focused on sort of the people that are making good paying jobs, that are going into the pockets of people who look like us, that are creating businesses that reflect faces that look like ours, or, women who look, outside of the Eurocentric standard of beauty.
And it's amazing to me that in 2022, that is still a conversation. There are so many brands that come into my DM saying, we'd love to send you, XYZ moisturizer, serum, eye cream. And then I look at their page and there is not a single person. I mean, maybe if I scroll and scroll and scroll, there'll be like one or two women of color. And it's like, why? I guess I just haven't fully wrapped my mind around not having, that's like the bare minimum, diverse representation in your marketing, social presence website. And still, some brands aren't even there yet.
I know. But the good thing for us, though, it's like sort of goes back to what we were just saying about like you'd rather somebody say out loud.
Yes.
Is that you get to like look at that page and be like, oh, okay, well, if this looks like this, you certainly don't have any people of color behind the scenes, Black people behind the scenes. Like I can just assume that.
Yes.
And if you do, they're minimal at best.
Yeah, or they're not in a position where they're empowered to speak up about it, which is also a problem.
Right.
So,
and they're not doing the creative work, which is like the chunk of your business, right? Like the leading portion of your business. And so, it absolutely is mind-boggling. And I think that those sort of like more household names, institutions, I'll leave names out that are sort of the people you find when you walk into a Macy's or a Bloomingdale's are realizing that actually beauty is being more and more defined by real people now.
Absolutely.
And that the inverse is happening when you go to TikTok and you are scrolling through beauty, Instagram's TikToks, or you go to the Instagram Explore page and you see that women are following real people now. They care more about real recommendations versus who's on a billboard or what model is wearing what. It's becoming less relevant. And I think that that's really why you'll see so many of these brands like scrambling to like make their like, oh, look, we have a creator page or like a creator program, but they still have no idea what they're doing.
Many of them do not, as I've learned, as I talk to more and more brand leaders. So what are your favorite beauty brands, products? Like, you also have amazing skin. You've got great hair. We've already talked about your brows, which are very much on point. What are your favorite beauty products at the moment?
I both love to try new products, but I also am a creature of habit. So when it comes to, I think skincare has been sort of a primary focus of mine, again, in the pandemic, because I was sort of sitting with my bare face every day, that I like many of us, like I think I started to focus more on the long-term health and appearance of my skin without any makeup on. I went through the phase of, baking and like super intense foundation and contour and, making my face, like beating my face rather. And now I've certainly come down a lot. And so foundationally, I think I really like to keep it light. Like I have a gentle cleanser. Like I use a Dermalogica face wash. I also have a Cetaphil one that I use.
We love Cetaphil.
Yeah. I really fundamentally believe in drugstore alternatives.
Yes.
I think that I wash my face in the shower. And, I'm going to be honest. Sometimes I forget to like wash my face at night, like I'll use a makeup wipe and I'll be like, you know what, I'm too tired tonight. And I don't do my skincare routine. And I just want to tell everybody that's okay. Okay.
That is okay.
But for the most part, I wash my face. I am a very huge fan of Biologique Recherche products.
You're part of the
I'm part
BR
of the
hive.
BR hive. I'm
What is
sorry.
it about the products that you love so much? And what are your faves?
Who's to say? You know what I mean? Like, I feel like I'm drinking the Kool-Aid, but like, and I'm sure that there's like, different alternatives and like, I don't need to be doing everything, but I am a very big P50 fan. Okay. I do not use it as often as many people do. But I do love to just like have it. Like I love to like use it like once a week to like really deeply tone my face.
Okay.
And I use there's a moisturizer that I really love by them called Dermo Purifiante.
Okay.
That is, it feels like oatmeal-y and gorgeous.
Like a nice soothing moisturizer.
Yes. I also have started using face oil.
I love a good facial oil. Okay, what's your go-to facial
but
oil?
I have to say though, I don't know if you feel this way or like I had to sort of like mentally break myself out of a place of the fear of putting oil on my face.
I have not had to do that only because my skin tends to be dry.
Got it.
And
okay.
I'm not that like breakout or acne prone.
Yeah.
So I've always been like drench me in oils.
Yeah, I'm not breakout prone either, but I guess I always just was like, if I put oil on my face is gonna be oily. You know what I mean?
Right.
And then I tried the Augustine Bader face oil.
Okay, I have that at home and I have not opened it yet. Is it?
Yeah, it's pretty great.
Okay.
But also, if you're like an oil person, I would love to hear how you feel about it.
Do you know what type of oil it is?
No.
Okay.
Absolutely not.
I'll do my research and find out what type of oil it is.
It's yellow.
Okay. I have their moisturizer that everyone loves. And, it's always difficult for me when I get gifted things because I am not paying for it. So it's easy to love things that are free.
Totally.
You're like, oh, this is great. But then people say, oh, is it worth $260? And that's where I have to say,
maybe not.
maybe not.
Okay.
Or maybe. I haven't used it enough to say.
100%. I again, like as I was saying, like when people DM me and will be like, is it worth it or whatever, I'll be like, if you have the means to get it, get it. But if I didn't, like, I don't think I would buy this. I'm happy to say that.
Yeah.
I love the Neutrogena Hydro Moisturizer.
Ooh, the
That's
Hydro
like a
Boost.
good one. Yeah. But you know what my big thing is SPF.
Okay, what's your go-to SPF?
I want to use this soapbox I have now to talk to brown and black women specifically about SPF because I think that enough of us don't use it.
Yes.
Because we believe, and it is true scientifically, our skin is more, with melanin obviously protects us from a certain level of UV harm.
To a degree. We're not going to become extremely sunburnt with 15 minutes of sun exposure the way one of our paler counterparts might.
Right. Our alabaster friends, allies. Alabaster allies. I have become obsessed with SPF. And I think that it has really changed the health and sort of way I feel about the confidence of the long-term health of my skin in a way that I am obsessed with.
Yes.
Like, I am always hounding people to put SPF on.
Yes. Well, in terms of the naked beauty audience, you are very much preaching to the choir.
Okay,
I think everyone is deep on the sunscreen train. I think people now are looking for mineral sunscreens that work well with brown skin.
Don't leave a white cast.
Don't leave a white cast. And I've been getting recommendations. There's Undefined. There's another brand called Kypris that has a product called Pot of Shade. That's a mineral sunscreen.
Nice.
That rubs in. There's another brand called Tizo that has a mineral sunscreen. So people are finding even mineral sunscreens. I do chemical sunscreen.
Okay, interesting.
I'm a Super Goop girl.
Okay.
And I found a lot of success with Super Goop.
Okay. Asian-made sunscreen.
Okay, yes.
Does not leave a white cast.
Okay.
So there's one by Innisfree, I believe.
Yes, this Innisfree sunscreen I hear a lot about.
Biore, is that how you say it?
Biore, I think, yeah.
Biore makes a great one. I also have found with ones that do tend to slightly leave a little bit of a white cast that I'm happy to mix it in with my tinted moisturizer. And I use Ami.
Ami Collet.
Yeah,
yes,
Collet.
Yes.
And I love their product. I have it all over my face right now. I have Ami Collet
so
on.
good.
I'm obsessed with the highlighter stick.
Yes, I love that highlight
It's
stick.
fantastic.
Just a little bit of glow and sheen.
Gorgeous.
Yeah.
They've made such amazing products. I hope that they make SPF next. I've really become obsessed with SPF. And it goes back to the foundational care of my skin. I have now started to use more in the last 2 years, more eye creams because I really want to make sure that I'm thinking about my eyes because
What's your go-to eye cream?
So I use I just started using gosh, I'm so bad at pronouncing these words. Is it Clou de, you know what I'm talking about?
Clé de Peau.
Clé de Peau.
Yes,
Okay.
I believe that's how it's pronounced.
Yes. I like their eye cream. What else did I just try? I was gifted the Augustine Bader one, which I've been enjoying. What I was using another one before, but what I noticed is that my skin underneath my eyes is really sensitive. And so I don't know what it means if it feels a little burny underneath.
That's not a good sign.
Yeah.
Not a good
Okay.
sign. Yeah.
So I definitely, I won't say who it was, but I stopped using their eye cream.
You can say who we talk about things that don't work all the time.
Yeah,
on the show.
who was it? Oh, Valmont. It was a
Okay.
Valmont one.
Okay.
Didn't love that. Immediately stopped
Different
using.
things work for different people.
Yeah, Valmont. I didn't work for me. But I'm new on my eye care journey. So if anybody has any recommendations, please send them to me.
Yeah, slide into Zara's DM.
Yeah, please tell me. What else? I'm trying to think.
Well, you seem very together from the outside looking in. As you look back on your beauty life, have there been any like big beauty mistakes you've made?
Oh my God. Yeah, my eyebrows. Like
That razor moment.
well, like even just sort of like, you know, like what year was it? Like 2015 and 2016 when like I really believe that was probably when people started like hyper focusing on brow shape.
Yeah, like I feel like Cara Delevingne like ushered in
Yeah.
a very full brow moment. Now, I've never had brows. I have to do microblading because I do not have brows.
Okay, got it.
So I've always been on the sidelines of this brow conversation. But yes, it did become a
I
big
definitely
thing.
overdid them. I think
Okay.
that like, oh man, like I can't tell, you know, the people in my life enough, like men and women, like a growth in a brow to me is so gorgeous, like stray hairs underneath and being able to like brush that up and like just leaving your brows like as sort of natural as possible, and then of course like shaping them slightly is like great. But like yeah, I had like super shaped eyebrows. I was looking back at a picture of me with eyelash extensions. Wow. Yeah. Never again. I like when I was living in LA for like the year of my life that I was there, like I really went in on sort of like that world of like really over grooming, and my lashes looked crazy. Like I was like, what? Like what's happening here?
Did you just get them really long?
I guess like I didn't really sort of like think about like, yeah, like how long would look natural.
Yeah, because you naturally have very long, thick eyelashes.
Yeah, I like to put like when I'm going to an event or something, I like to put like individual lashes sometimes on the outside, like a little moment.
Yeah.
But boy, those were bad days for me. I was looking back and I'm like, ugh, delete. Lose it. Like, never want to see these again.
Yeah.
And then, like, what else? Like, you know, we all went, I went through, like, super intense makeup stages. Like, I wore, like, what was your favorite MAC lipstick?
Ooh, you know, for me, it was more of the lip glass.
Okay.
With
See, I was wearing, like, Rebel.
Oh,
you know what I mean? I was, like, wearing, like, Rebel.
Okay. Like strong. But
on like a Tuesday.
Okay, but here's the thing. I actually like love that for us because I feel like as women in our early 30s, we did have the opportunity to live through like the bold lipstick era.
Totally.
Of like you would just throw on like a purple lip, like a pink lip, a red lip. And like I like that.
I feel like you're my people, definitely.
Yeah.
Like if I know that you like went through that phase, like it makes it easy for me to sort of be like, okay, like we're the same people.
Yes.
But like yeah, in retrospect, I was like wearing like my like Rebel lipstick with like my lime green top, and like I was just like out on the streets, like being like, here I am, you know.
Yeah. But you know what? I love it. I've landed on this side of TikTok about like, I don't know, like how to be like classy. Which
interesting.
Yeah, I'm not loving. Some people say it's kind of like an extension of like luxury black girl TikTok. But there's all of this stuff about like, don't wear neons, don't wear things with cutouts, have your hair this way. And I actually think that that's not great because I think especially young people, like you should have been in that neon top.
Totally.
And like, I think that there's a lot of value to experimenting with your look while you're young, or actually at any stage, experiment with your look and having fun.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I would say that I don't like, it wasn't like a mistake as much as it is one of those things that I look back on and like never doing that again.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Part of the journey.
Yeah, totally.
Yes.
And yeah, absolutely. Like I actually like am lucky that like I was for sort of like that time and at that age, like good at makeup
Yeah.
for, again, like the standard that like was sort of set forth. But like I was trying things and I wasn't scared to try things. And so I certainly feel grateful for that. But yeah, I mean, MAC lipsticks were crazy. I still wear my Whirl. That's one of my favorite nude lipsticks for me. But yeah, I definitely like only pull out the red occasionally.
When you want to have a moment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But with makeup, like now it's sort of like less is more for me. Like if I can sort of like accentuate the features of my face that I feel, really I believe are beautiful parts of my face, then I'm doing a good job with my makeup. And so I've really appreciated this phase of sort of the makeup movement.
Yes.
Of like natural, like sort of sun-kissed, wearing like a nice like highlighter that's like just natural and doesn't have a ton of like glitter.
Yeah.
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 But like, right now I have, like I've never been good at eyeshadow, but I have like a brown eyeshadow on now, and I've been using this fun makeup by Mario. It's like I don't even know. It's like an iridescent sort of
so
finish. That's what's
pretty.
on my eyes right now.
It's so pretty.
Yeah.
It's like this twinkling sparkle.
Thank you.
I'm obsessed.
I know, and
it
it's like
seems to
so
not
subtle, and it like translates really well from night to day.
Yes.
Or day to night, rather. No, day to night. Yeah,
Day to night,
Day to
but
night, and
It
I love
seems
it.
to not be moving. I'm always conscious about glitter on my eyes because I feel like it's going to end up all over my face. But this glitter is like on the lid and
It's
nowhere else.
Awesome. I will
Okay.
definitely. I'm gonna send you one. But it is truly just like a nice thing to just like slide on my eyes. And yeah, like it's like as you said, like it's not something that like falls off of your eyes throughout the day.
It looks so good.
But yeah, this is where I am on my makeup journey right now.
love it.
I've been loving using cream products more, definitely.
cream
Like
blush.
I've sort of like moved out of like powder. And so definitely like cream blushes, love.
Okay, what's your favorite cream blush?
Okay, so I have 4 different ones right now.
Tell me all of
Okay, I
them.
have e.l.f. Putty,
Okay.
which I love. $4 at Ulta or wherever you can
Okay.
find the CVS. Those are gorgeous,
Okay.
and they're like nice, sort of like if you're just going out to like, on the like on a weekday or
Yeah.
whatever. You definitely have to build those a little bit, but they're just like gorgeous. There's one called, I think it's Bora Bora. And then I have the lighter version of that one as well. $4. Okay. Nighttime, I've actually been learning a lot about color theory.
Okay.
And with black and brown or just even melanated skin, purple works really well for our skin tones.
I love a purple.
And so I've been using the Rare Beauty
Ah.
blush,
And
which
that
is
so
purple.
it's so pigmented
Yes,
too.
and you need a tiny bit of it. And
Yes.
if you blend that bitch out, it is
okay.
great.
Love it.
I love that blush. And I really, I think she's done such a great job with that brand.
I agree.
It's quality. It's
I
good.
agree.
And she's like one of the like 9,000 celebrities that have put out beauty
Right.
products and lines that actually should stay.
Yes.
I believe.
Yes. 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 I agree.
And I really love that blush. And I learned that from a TikTok. And from there, I like just searched purple cream blushes, and I just went on a journey. And so I found that. And the other blush that I really like is actually also Makeup by Mario, and it's a cream blush dab, and it's a hot pink, which I was sort of like a little like resistant to, but when I blend it, gorgeous.
Yes.
And it feels nice. It feels like it just like blends right in with your foundation or
Yes.
your moisturizer or
Yes.
whatever it is that
Yes.
you're
Yes.
using.
That creaminess just
Yeah.
makes it that finish of cream blush.
The best.
I just love it. Yeah, I'm
best.
wearing the like Merit Beauty little.
Oh yeah, Merit is great.
Super easy.
A
super
lot
easy.
of people love Merit. And then also Westman Atelier, I think,
Yes.
makes a nice
Yes.
cream
Westman's
blush as
really-
well.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. And I love that packaging.
Yeah.
Well, I feel like I can't have you leave here without just dropping some career advice, just because I think you've had such an incredible career, and I think you're able to speak really well about what it's like to be a woman of color navigating, predominantly white institutions. Any career advice you can share?
Gosh. Oh my God. Jobs are like, I think it's more so like extend more grace to yourself. Like, let yourself be somewhere where you feel really happy about what you're doing and not sort of the sexiness of what the brand means to the world, or you know what I mean? And I think refocusing the sort of perspective to center yourself in the way that you move through the world. Like, we all have to do capitalism, like if you're living in this country, like, unfortunately we have to grind, we have to work. It is, sort of, it would be misguided and irresponsible for me to be like, just figure it out. Like, take some time off. And like, we don't all have that luxury. But if you can sort of like keep your North Star, like, to a place of, I want to work somewhere, I want to do something that makes me feel like a fuller version of myself, then like, you're good. And so long as you can do that, that's great. And also that it's not going to be easy. It's really hard to have that conversation with yourself. It's really uncomfortable. It can feel really lonely, especially if you're thinking about doing work that is creative and vulnerable, and asks you to do something that pushes you to a place that's like uncomfortable. I'm going through that right now with writing. I've always wanted to write. I've always wanted to think about telling a story that is not somebody else's, and it's really hard and vulnerable work.
Yes. Yes.
And it's really scary. But I keep trying to tell myself that it's supposed to feel this way. If it felt any other way, then I wouldn't be doing it right.
Yes.
Or would it be good?
Yes. And I think it's important throughout your career to ask yourself when you're getting too comfortable and when you need to push yourself to be in a more uncomfortable space, because that's where you find growth.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah.
Final question for you. When do you feel most beautiful?
Oh, gosh. When I'm with other women.
Yeah.
Truly. I know that sounds like so sort of like corny and dumb, but like I have realized that like getting dressed up to like be out with my girlfriends or like be at dinner with my friends and like looking around the table and like, realizing that I'm with a bunch of incredible, smart, gorgeous women and feeling like we're doing that for each other is the best feeling in the world. And I think that like that is the most beautiful. Women have always made me feel the most beautiful version of myself. My matriarchs, my peers, younger women, random women in the street. Like, there is nothing that gets me off more than a woman giving me a random compliment. You know what I mean?
The best.
Man, like, and I think that like I feel most beautiful when I'm around other women, and when I'm doing it for myself too. When I feel like getting up and getting putting makeup on, that I'm not like, who am I doing this for? Why am I doing this? I've stopped doing that, and I think that those are sort of like the ways that I think about beauty, and it's just made it so much more fun to engage in and valuable, and less sort of like icky and commercial, and it's just made it more enjoyable.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. Well, such a pleasure to speak with
best.
you and have you on the podcast.
You are so good at this.
Oh my gosh, thank you very
I think
much.
that I am so grateful that people like you are doing this work and doing it so flawlessly, and the way that you approach your work, and do this podcast, the people that you interview, it's important, and
Thank
you
you.
don't do it with sort of any radical, like, we have to talk. You do it so effortlessly and naturally, and I
Thank
think that
you.
that's the best way that it can exist. And
Thank you very much.
I can't wait to see where this goes,
Yes.
you know, and I love you for it.
Yeah, we'll come back when your book is out, and we'll
And
talk about your book.
We'll see. Only if Mavi can come.
Oh my gosh, of course, I know. Everyone's like the biggest Mavi fan. Definitely, you have to
Mavi
meet
Hive.
him. Mavi Hive, for real. All right, thank you so much, Zara.
Thank you, Brooke.